Hello everybody and welcome back to the internet. So as some of you already saw, I made a post going over a list of all of the potential topics we can have scary stories of. So if you're interested, you can go over there and just let me know which kinds of stories you're most interested in. But for tonight, we have, to all the Reddit travelers, what is your creepiest hotel story? My mom was traveling for work and sat next to a man, a fellow business traveler, on the plane. They had a casual conversation and exchanged business cards. Later that evening, she's in her hotel watching TV, and gets a phone call from the front desk that her husband is here and they want to know if they can give him a key to the room. Turns out the creep on the plane was pretending to be her husband to try and get into her room. You know, that seems like kind of an odd hotel policy. I found a hotel in Yangon the day we got there for pretty cheap. They mentioned the rates were low because maintenance was being done on several floors. We sleep fine, wake up and head to breakfast. At breakfast, we met some Germans who had also stayed the night in our hotel. They said they had not slept well because during the middle of the night, someone woke them up to move them from the floor they were on. So we all found out later that they had been moved because they were on one of the levels reserved for maintenance, and part of the maintenance including gassing the rooms for bugs. During the middle of the night, they were just going around the rooms, shoving a gas nozzle or whatever under the doors and letting them run. Wound up killing the two people next to the Germans before they realized they'd accidentally booked people on that floor. We weren't on that floor, thankfully, but it has always stuck with me how seemingly easy it could have been to have gotten mixed up in that. Well then, remind me never to get a hotel in Myanmar. In 1996, while air drying naked after a shower, lying on my hotel bed in Beijing with the curtains drawn, I received a call demanding I put clothes on. Well, I guess the deep state Chinese government didn't think you were too attractive. When I was 12, I was staying at a motel with my mom on a road trip. We were in the middle of nowhere in Texas at a motel that had a decent rating in our guidebook and was really cheap, so we went for it. In the middle of the night, the owner knocked on the door and told us we had to leave because he wanted the room for someone else. My mom was outside arguing with him while I was gathering our things, and I was terrified because I heard him start yelling. I looked out the window and saw about a half-dozen bikers in vests appear out of nowhere and start confronting the owner. My mom came inside quickly and we watched them start harassing the guy. Things like, "She paid to be here, you're gonna let her stay tonight. We don't want to ever hear crap like this from you again." And the owner was saying things like, "I don't want any trouble." Everyone left fairly quickly and we didn't ever hear anything about it the next day at checkout. We weren't able to sleep very well because we were so shook up, but it was better than getting in the car again. Thank you, anonymous biker gang. Man, I'd love to hear the stories from people who work at, like, middle-of-nowhere motels. I have no idea what kind of weird stuff they must encounter regularly. I arrived at a secluded, coastal hotel south of Marmaris, Turkey, around 2 a.m. It had been a long day in Istanbul, followed by a flight and a long bus ride into Marmaris, where I haggled with non-English-speaking taxi drivers, who were not even aware that this small resort exists. When the taxi pulls up to the hotel, it's on fire. When the owner, standing out front, sees us, he opens a taxi door excitedly. "You come, I have nice room for you." I point out that the hotel is on fire, but he simply gestures and says, "Small fire, no problem, you come." I am utterly exhausted. I find myself following the owner into the hotel, stepping over fire hoses, waving away smoke, passing firefighters as they run up and down a very nice staircase. We pause at the second floor landing, and the owner tells me, "See, fire only on this side of the hotel. This side no fire. You come." My exhaustion removes every ounce of common sense, and I followed him into a room down the hall. The room is indeed fire-free. I quickly scanned the "in case of fire" message on the back of the door, checked the window escape, and promptly passed out with my gear and boots on. In the morning, I awake, alive, wondering if I had dreamt the entire thing. I go down the smoky stairs past the charred other side of the hotel. The owner is so happy to see me, still alive, that he eats breakfast with me. I went back a few years later, and the hotel had fully recovered. Wow, that owner must have been very desperate for business at the time. It's like, don't mind the place burning down. We'll get you a room that's not on fire. I once stayed at a B&B, which had a shared bathroom. The first night I got up at probably like 2 a.m., and I was bursting for a pee. The bathroom was down the hallway. Not too far, but seemed like such an effort in my tired state. I get to the bathroom and open the door, and there was this guy just standing in the bathroom, dressed head to toe in a mime costume. Face painted and everything. He was squatted down on the floor, but his trousers were still up. I looked at him for a second. He gave me a wave with a smile and began just silently pushing. I ran back to my room, locked the door, and decided to pee in a bottle. I'm still not sure if I was just really tired and seeing things or something. It's seriously the strangest thing I've ever seen. Are you guys getting turned off from hotels yet? Well, we still got a whole bunch more. I stayed in a B&B in Pennsylvania that seemed cute enough. They did have a wall of antique dolls in the main room, but otherwise no signs of weirdness. That's until we're settled in the room. I noticed some scratches on the floor near a bookcase, and after some inspection realized it was a secret door. When I asked the owner, who gave me a creepy vibe, if it worked, he said yes, and showed me that it opened to their office, which was a cluttered room with a computer and piles of crap. It had a lock on their side, and when I asked if there was a lock on my side, he smiled and said, "No." When I showed some concern that there was an unlockable entrance to my room that was camouflaged, that they didn't tell me about, he just kept smiling. So that night, no sex, fear of cameras, and I barricaded the freaking door and barely slept. You know, I've never actually stayed at a B&B. I guess I just kind of prefer the assurance of staying in a hotel that everything's going to be mostly normal. In Mexico, my girlfriend and I stayed a night in a hut in the jungle. No running water, no electricity. As we were from Central Europe, we're not used to dangerous wildlife, like spiders and scorpions, etc. There was a beautiful sea note nearby, and at some point it rained like crazy. The daytime was amazing, the night not so much. In our hut was a bed with a mosquito net with huge holes in it. It was pitch black in the hut as we laid down and got comfortable trying to sleep. I felt a bit creeped out and decided to check the hut for insects with my phone flashlight. Bad idea. There were hundreds of big spiders all over the walls and ceilings. Not the night's sleep I had, wrapped up like a mummy every piece of clothing we had with us. Yeah, anything that involves bugs and spiders and anything like that, it's gonna get a no from me. Okay, so I already posted this on another thread, but when I was about 4 years old, my family ended up staying at the Cedar Lodge Motel, where Cary Stayner worked right before he murdered 4 women. My family drove to Yosemite, and it was a long drive for us. 3 kids all under the age of 7, plus 2 adults, and a ton of mountains will do that. By the time we arrived at the motel, it was late, we were all cranky, and we couldn't wait to get out. But the moment we pulled in, something set my mom's teeth on edge, and she insisted that we left and found another hotel, reservation or not. My mom has always had this, sixth sense, and her gut has actually saved us a couple of times, but my dad was tired and convinced her to ignore her gut and stay for just the night, and the next morning we'd leave. I can remember my mom actually refusing to let go of our hands, making us stay right by her side as she kept looking around while checking in. To try and get her to relax, my dad suggested we go to the pool, thinking it would calm her down. Well, when we got there were no towels, so my mom called the front desk. The moment the man delivering the towels arrived, my mom immediately grabbed us out of the water and rushed us back to the room. The man gave her the absolute creeps, and she said there was just this feeling of pure evil when he looked at us. That night, my mom and dad pushed the dresser in front of the door and had us all sleep in the same bed. The next morning, we left to go to another hotel, but my mom couldn't stop talking about how evil that motel was. About 2 months later, she and my dad were up late watching the news when they started reporting on a man who had murdered a woman and 2 young girls in Yosemite. Just as my mom began to say, "I bet it was at that motel," they showed Cary Stayner's face, and it said it occurred at the Cedar Lodge Motel. Cary Stayner was the man who brought us our towels at the pool. We've never gone back to Yosemite, and my mom is always insistent that we listen to our gut feelings, and when every bone in your body is telling you something is wrong, get out of there. Yeah, it is pretty interesting that sometimes as a species we're just so good at telling that there's a danger, even when there's no real signs of it. I did the couchsurfing.com thing with a friend a few years ago. We're both big guys, so typically feel safe everywhere we go. We show up at the house. A 60-year-old guy opens the door while on the phone. He's only wearing sweatpants. He signals for us to enter. He continues his conversation and ends with an "I love you." He turns to us and says, "Welcome," and apologizes for being on the phone. He starts talking about his girlfriend, who he was talking with, and how she lives overseas. He mentions he has several girlfriends and boasts about being a ladies' man. He then starts to show us pictures. These girls look like they were 14. While sliding through the pic, he accidentally showed us one of their passports. This weirded us out a lot. We were early 20s and didn't really know what to do, so we said we were tired and wanted to sleep. He walked us to the room while rubbing his belly, told us he was making breakfast in the morning. We decided to sleep the night, but leave before he woke up. My friend slept on the bedroom door so he couldn't sneak in. We got up super early and bolted. We got super weird vibes from the guy and just felt gross and weird about the whole thing. Well, the world can be a lot more dangerous and creepy place than we sometimes give it credit for. So if you go out traveling the world, you're gonna run into some of that stuff. I was traveling out of the country right after finishing up a huge 5-day work event, where I had about 10 hours of sleep total during the 5 days. I got to the motel, which is kind of run down, and the carpet and blankets are a dump, but I'm so exhausted I don't even really think about it. I fall asleep pretty much immediately, at like 8 p.m. local time. At maybe 11 p.m. or so, I get a call from the motel phone saying there's been a complaint about noise. I tell them that's impossible. I've been sleeping. They ask me if maybe someone else is in the room, and I tell them nope. I'm here alone, so there's definitely no one else making noise. They ask me again if I'm sure I'm by myself and not causing any noise. I say yes again, fall back asleep immediately. When I woke up and thought about it some more, I realized how weird the entire interaction was. There was absolutely no noise I could hear anywhere nearby, and I don't know why the motel staff would need to clarify so many times that I was alone. Apparently they never called, so I assume it must have been someone calling the different rooms to see who was in the rooms and how many people. I've never been so glad to always use the extra latch chain lock. Man, some people come up with the most clever ways of being a predator. I don't even think about this kind of thing. A friend and I once stayed at a pretty fancy B&B for the night. The lady who owned it was absolutely lovely, but would appear out of nowhere. We'd be sitting alone in a large room with one doorway, and suddenly she was in the room with us. Either this joint had secret doors or something really creepy was going on. She seemed to know things that we'd said or done as well. The thing that tripped us out the most was hearing someone trying to open our door during the night. She was super lovely and the building was beautiful, but we were relieved to check out the next morning. You know, I can't really understand the motivation of people who want to open a B&B if you're going to be so paranoid about what your guests might be doing. Like, maybe this just isn't the best investment for you. I was staying in Birmingham, Alabama at a Hyatt. Nothing crazy, nothing obviously creepy. One night at around 2 a.m., I woke up to a man screaming. Like, stabbed in the heart scream. I sat there in panic, wondering if I should call someone, but when I didn't hear anything else, I chalked it up to a dream. The next night, I woke up at around 3 a.m. and had this horrible feeling that someone was in my room. I rolled over and there was an old man, sitting on the AC, smoking, looking away from me. I stared at him for a few seconds and then he turned to look at me. So I shot up and out of bed, ready to run, and no one was there. I don't lucid dream. While I have vivid dreams, they are not that vivid. I can describe that man to a T, and yet he was never there. Yeah, I know what it's like to have dreams just completely messed with your head. Sometimes when you wake up at the wrong time, you don't know what's real and what isn't. A chalet in the state of Maine, Vermont, with 3 others. The lady at the front desk was approximately 1 billion years old, with cloudy eyes, and her front desk was a small table next to a recliner in a room full of knickknacks and china dolls. The actual room was what I imagine a hotel room in the 40s would look like, and obviously it had never been remodeled. The bathroom had a metal claw foot tub. The worst part, though, was that the door at the back of the room, I assumed it would be another closet, but we opened it and there was nothing but cold and darkness. We used our flashlights on our phones and discovered a long, wide, cement-walled hallway. I assumed it was used to travel between the rooms when the weather was bad, but the vibe it gave off was making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The night went smoothly and nothing ever happened, but I still feel like we survived a night in a boring horror movie. I've tried to look for it again, but with no results. I'll have to ask my grandma who booked the trip. Well, that's all for our hotel stories. You know, we actually covered quite a wide variety of types of stories here. I guess it just shows that no matter where you stay, something scary could happen. But anyways, take a look at the list of story topics I posted, and let me know which ones you guys are interested in most. So I will talk to you guys tomorrow.